title, her father cast her out, exiled to the forest. Then the princess found shelter in a human's arms. The sun had barely risen over the high walls of Eldoria when Princess Selara knelt before her father, King Malric, trembling. The words he spoke sliced through her heart like jagged ice. "You have brought shame upon this kingdom, Selara. I can no longer protect you," he said, his voice cold as the marble floors. "You are exiled. Leave at once and never return." Selara's hands flew to her mouth in disbelief. "Father, please. I don't understand. What have I done to deserve this?" "You have consorted with outsiders," he replied, his eyes hard, unyielding. "You have brought humans into these sacred halls. You are no longer welcome here." Tears blurred her vision as she staggered out of the throne room, her silk gown brushing against the cold stone floors. The courtiers watched silently, their faces pale with shock, as the princess was led through the castle gates. Beyond the walls, the dense, ancient forest of Eldoria loomed, its shadows deep and foreboding. With no other choice, Selara stepped into the forest, each footfall heavy with despair. The first night was brutal. Wolves howled in the distance, and the wind whipped through the trees like a living thing. Hunger gnawed at her belly, and her royal clothes offered little warmth. Selara curled beneath the roots of an old oak, shivering, and whispered a silent plea. "Please, let someone find me. Let me live." Morning brought little comfort, but it also brought a strange warmth. A scent of fire and cooked food drifted through the trees. Guided by hope, Selara followed it and stumbled upon a small, humble cabin. Smoke rose from its chimney, and smoke alone suggested safety. She knocked, timid and desperate. The door opened, revealing a man with calloused hands and eyes like the forest itself, kind yet wary. I am lost," Selara said, her voice trembling. "Please. I have nowhere to go." The man studied her for a long moment, and then, as if deciding she was harmless, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said simply. "You look like you've been through the worst the forest can offer." Inside, the warmth of the fire and the aroma of stew made Selara feel almost human again. She sat, her fingers brushing the rough wooden table. The man, whose name was Thomas, served her a bowl of stew. "Eat," he said. "You need strength." Selara hesitated. Why would a human help me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Thomas shrugged. "Because kindness doesn't depend on crowns or titles. You're hurt. That's enough reason." Days turned into weeks, and Selara remained in the cabin. She learned to help Thomas with chores, to gather firewood, and even to tend a small garden. In return, Thomas shared stories of his life in the village, of humans who struggled and thrived, laughed and loved, even without royal blood. Selara's heart began to heal in ways she had never imagined. She had come into the forest as a frightened, exiled princess, but now she found strength in resilience and courage in humility. Thomas treated her as an equal, and for the first time Selara felt safe, truly safe. But one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a shadow fell across the cabin doorway. Selara froze. King Malric had sent his men to retrieve her, believing that she could bring disgrace to the kingdom if she remained hidden among humans. "Selara," her father's voice boomed, but the years of isolation had changed her. She no longer trembled. She stood tall, her eyes meeting his without fear. "Father, I belong here. Not in a castle that cast me out. Not with people who only see what I am, not who I am." Malric's face darkened with fury. "You defy me. I have learned more about life and strength in these woods than I ever did in your halls," Selara said. "I am not a princess who hides behind walls. I am someone who survives, someone who chooses compassion over fear. Her father's soldiers shifted uneasily, sensing the resolve in her voice. Thomas stepped forward, calm yet protective. She has found a home here. You cannot take that away. For a tense moment, silence ruled. Then Malric turned away, his pride and anger burning. You will regret this, he spat, but Selara no longer feared him. As the soldiers departed, the forest seemed to breathe around her. Selara fell into Thomas's arms, the warmth of human kindness surrounding her like a shield. I didn't think I could survive out here, she admitted, tears of relief streaming down her face. You have survived, Thomas said softly, brushing her hair back. And you will continue to, not as a princess of stone walls, but as someone who can love and be loved. Night fell, blanketing the forest in a velvet darkness, but for Selara, it was no longer a place of fear. It was a sanctuary. She had been cast out, but she had found shelter, not in the grandeur of her father's castle, but in the steadfast arms of a human who saw her worth. The forest whispered around them, a promise of freedom and new beginnings. And for the first time, Selara smiled without restraint, knowing that exile had brought her not despair, but life, love, and the courage to stand as her own person. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor, a sudden noise startled Selara. King Malric's soldiers had come, sent to bring his exiled daughter back. She stood her ground, no longer trembling. Selara, her father's voice boomed, sharp with anger. You will return to the castle at once. Selara's chest rose and fell with steady determination. Father, I belong here, she said, her voice clear and unwavering. Not in a castle that cast me out. I have learned more about life, strength, and love here than I ever did within your walls. Malric's face darkened, and he glared at her. You defy me. I have survived, she replied. I have found kindness, safety, and truth, not in crowns or gold, but in the hearts of those who care. And I will not give that up for fear or pride. Thomas stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She has found a home here. You cannot take that away. For a long moment silence fell. Then, with a final glare, Malric turned and left, his soldiers following. Selara exhaled, relief washing over her. She fell into Thomas's arms, feeling warmth and safety for the first time in weeks. I didn't think I could survive, she whispered. You have, he said softly. And you'll continue to thrive, not as a princess of stone walls, but as someone who can love, be loved, and live freely. Night settled over the forest, but Selara no longer feared the darkness. Exiled by her father, she had discovered her true home, not in a palace, but in a life of courage, compassion, and love. In the quiet of the woods, she smiled, finally free.